Claude Sittons interviewing Robert A. Pruett, better known by some as Bob Pruett, who is on the board of directors at the History Museum, and we're interviewing him at the interview room in the History Museum.
In 1942, my mother and two of my brothers, older brothers, moved to Morganton. I had two sisters living here at the time. The North Koreans invaded South Korea, and the draft, well, everybody of age had to sign up for the draft and take physicals at that time. I was put in Class 1A, which is imminent to be called. I mean, ready to be called. And talking to my brother, which was a member of the Air Force in World War II, and to my mother, she had 3 sons that was in World War II. And I, for some reason, let them talk me into going into the Air Force. I don't know why, but some people say it was draft dodgers, and maybe we were. I don't know. But anyway, I went in the Air Force in December of 1951. I was assigned to a B-26 crew.
Now, how long was it before you got this assignment?
Stayed in Lowry Air Force Base from February until July of 1952. And left Lowry and reported to Langley Air Force Base for combat crew training. And that's where I met the pilot and navigator, and we were assigned to B-26s. Now, I just mentioned B-29s, but B-26s had the remote control turrets. And that's the reason I mentioned that. They both had the same type of turrets with a little bit different sight system. The B-26 only carries a crew of 3. It's a pilot, the navigator, bombardier, and the gunner. And I was assigned to a combat crew at Langley Field, Virginia, in August of '52. We left from there and went to Camp Stoneman, California, and they flew us from Camp Stoneman to Hickam Field in Hawaii, and on to Wake Island, and from Wake Island to Tokyo, Japan, and from Tokyo, Japan, I went to K1, which is north of Busan's, a little place called Daegu, I believe it is. And because the runway was being paved at K9, so our whole 17th Bomb Wing had been transferred up to K1 to fly out of there. And I spent a couple of nights there, and just luckily I got on the bus down to K9 in a couple of days. So we were really the first group to come back to the base after they paved the runway. A couple of days later, they flew the entire operations and moved it back down to K9.
You at that time had never had any flight training, I assume.
No, I just...
You later became a pilot, though.
I did, but that time I was just riding. I was just a passenger.
All right, continue and tell us a little bit more about your experiences.
Well, I wrote an article to a reunion association. We have a newsletter, and I wrote it and called it My Dollar Ride. The first mission you fly in the Korea at K9, you had to pay the crew members $1 because you're riding with them and they're training you, and they expect to get paid for that. But I call that was my dollar ride, and I was assigned to, the pilot was named Abart, excuse me. The navigator bombardier was Monsell was his name, and the gunner was Hopkins. And so I went on that mission with them. Now the pilot, Abart and Monsell, was flying their 50th mission, which meant that was their last mission. And I was flying my first mission.
Oh, gosh.
Well, the last mission, you would think, and I thought, that they would go up north of the bomb line and salvo the bomb load and turn around and get back to the base and celebrate. You got your missions ended. But this crew didn't seem to think like I did. We went up north and was assigned to an area to patrol at night. And by the way, all of our missions, with the exception of one, was night missions. That was our job, was to fly at night and interdict supplies and troops moving from north to south. But this guy, Burke, was a real, I don't know, well, they referred to him something like a tiger or, you know, a real flyboy. They started shooting at us from the ground. Of course, you get ground fire. And he seemed to get mad about it. I don't know. He turned around, he used some bad language, I know that, and turned that plane up on its wing and came back around and went into a dive. And I thought he was going to strafe them.
Now, what do you mean by that?
Well, strafing is you got 350 caliber machine guns in each wing, and you use that for strafing. But he didn't. He dropped 2 500-pound bombs on that gun emplacement. And apparently we hit them or got close enough to them that they didn't want to shoot at us anymore because they quit. We flew around. Again, I thought we would go home. You know, I mean, this is our 50th mission. You know, why not get out of here and go on home? But we flew around and strafed buildings, dropped bombs on what we thought was targets. And he finally said, let's go over to Wonsan Harbor and see if we can find anything over there. And we went over to Wonsan, and today I don't know whether we was assigned to that territory or not, but we went over there. And he got a truck traveling south down the road there, and he strafed that truck till it blew up right in front of us. And we were out of ammunition and out of bombs. So thank goodness we went home then. Well, they opened up a bottle of champagne going back down to, flying back south to K9 and passed the bottle around in the plane. Of course, I was sick by that time. But Burke said, well, sip a little champagne. Said that'd be good for your stomach. And by golly, it worked too. So, but they rotated back to the States, and that was my first mission. And I wrote an article about that. And they published it in the reunion newsletter.
So that was the dollar ride.
That was my dollar ride. I flew 24 missions after that, and the way it worked, we started leaving. You'd have one airplane taking off usually by 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and there would be planes leaving every 15 or 20 minutes, and go up north. And you were assigned to an area. They called it a road recce or a red 9 or purple 10, or that was an area that you were assigned to.
Now your location then was exactly where, that when you were making these missions?
I was at K9 in Busan, South Korea.
And how far were you flying from there on your missions?
Oh, we would go up, the bomb line was just north of the 38th parallel, just north of Seoul at that time. And it didn't move actually from the time we started flying until they signed the peace treaty, the agreement not to fight anymore. But the Chinese, and especially the Chinese and the North Koreans, they had a railroad track up a place called Death Valley. And there was a railroad track went down through this valley for a long ways that and they ran some trains down it. But they also would go down to the end of that valley, where there was a tunnel there, and set up a light. And they had something that would make smoke or steam. I don't know what it was. But they would, and you'd look at that and you'd think that there's a train coming out of that tunnel, headed up the track. I mean, it looks like a train. The light would even shake, you know. And of course, the very minute that you got down in that valley to go to try to glide bomb that, hit or strafe that train, anti-aircraft guns on the hills on both sides of the valley and put you in a crossfire there. And we got into that, and just as they started firing at us, the navigator happened to realize where we were going, and he told the pilot, and of course we got out of there as fast as we could get out. There was no train down there, but it looked like a train.
Just a trap.
It was a trap, that's what it was.
Ambush, huh?
And but those are some of the experiences that I had. And
if you will, tell us a little bit about the plane and the location so that the kids who will be watching this will understand what it was that you did.
Well, this is a model of a B-26. It's commissioned and it's on a scale of 1 to 77. And you see the name MONIE on the side of this plane here. I talked to the pilot that actually flew this plane from Maryland, and that's his wife's name. And that's where he named this. This was the plane, one of the planes that he was assigned to. I told you earlier, talked about the glass nose ship. You'll notice that this has got a plexiglass nose on it. This is where the Navigator Bombardier actually rode up here. The pilot was over in this cockpit here, and a lot of times, I'll turn it this way, maybe you can see
Okay,
it better.
that's better.
A lot of times I would ride up front here because the gunner's compartment back here, and you'll notice there's a sight. It had a periscope sight in it. I said the sight earlier that it was different than the B-29 sights. This had a periscope sight in it where you could look at the top or the bottom of the aircraft. The aircraft had two engines rated at 2,000 horsepower each. We carried a full fuel load. We had 350 caliber machine guns here and 3 in this wing. We had 2 in this turret and 2 in the bottom turret, and each one of them had 1,800 rounds of ammunition. We carried 4 500-pound bombs under the wings, and sometimes we'd have rockets, and we could carry 6 500-pound bombs in the bomb bay. So we took off at a right good load. Matter of fact, we were overloaded when we left. I have a picture of that first mission I was telling you about. When they got back, they took a picture beside of the airplane. And
Who is that young guy right there?
oh, that's me right there.
Okay. And I believe you said you were about 20 years of age there.
I was 21 then.
Okay.
But that was the picture of my last, when I'd finished my last mission. They always take a picture of the last mission, if you make it, you know. And I'm actually standing up in the cockpit of that plane. If you can visualize the way if you look right here, you'll see that that canopy folds over to the right. It opens up to the right and to the left, the pilot. And I was standing up in the cockpit of that plane, and right in that position there, when that picture was made.
Well, we're glad to have that at the museum, and appreciate you contributing the helmet and that picture. That'll mean a lot to us in future years.